Hey guys, this is Allison from Allylat Creations. How are you? Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky. I don't recall where I left off, but I'm going to start with stanza 2. I know it's very not well of me to forget where I left off. I wrote it down, by the way. And because I've been cleaning out my house, things disappear. Papers as well. It's very hot here today in New York. I got a nice breeze going on. It's kind of quiet, so I'm going with it. Before I begin, please hit that like button. Please subscribe if you haven't done so to my channel already. Please share because it's caring. And if you get anything from my work, please support my work. If you got a light bulb moment, a connect the dot, an epiphany, a new book to read, if you have it within you to donate and to help me out, please do so. Time is raveling down and I have yet to be able to pay my internet, my electric bills. And that's gonna be very interesting to see what happens for next month, amongst other things that I can't pay. I'm trying to avoid bankruptcy because I want to sell my house. So there's a lot of things going on. Not trying to think about it, I'm trying to distract myself and put my best face forward. But we need to get some of this in so that if I do disappear, you have videos to watch. Stanza 2, commentary. And before I completely begin, for those of you who are new to my channel, I have dyslexia. I have really bad teeth. And here, all I hear, it comes down. I've shown it in one of my videos. Not the complete all the way down because I look like somebody's son that's the president of the United States. It's not a pretty sight. It's rather embarrassing. And I also have some other issues in my mouth because of this, that I can't project certain words out properly, like pronouncing them out. And also with Sanskrit and some of the other languages that do inhibit these books, I just can't get it out. It's not because I'm not trying or I haven't went to the pronounce Google app thing or try to find it on YouTube to see how people do it. It just doesn't come out naturally, doesn't want to project. So please be mindful, and I'm doing this, I'm giving this disclaimer to be respectful. I'm not here to disrespect anybody's language or anybody's religion or faith or following. So put that there. Where were the builders, the luminous sons of Manvantrik dawn? In the unknown darkness in their high Paranishpana Pishana, the producers of form, from no form, the root of the world, the Devametry, and Shabbat rested in the bliss of not being. You see, this is what I'm talking about right there. The builders, the sons of Manvaraktic dawn, are the real creators of the universe. Sorry, guys, I got cat hair flying everywhere. And in this doctrine, while deals only with our planetary system, they, as the architects of the latter, are also called the watchers of the seven spheres, which esoterically are the 7 planets and esoterically the 7 earths or spheres, planets of our chain also. The opening sentence of stanza 1, when mentioning 7 eternities, is made to apply both to the Maha Kalapa, or the great age of Brahma, as well as the Sola Palaya, and subsequent resurrection of our planetary system on the higher plane. There are many kinds of paralaya, dissolution of thing visible, as we be shown elsewhere. Paranishparana, remember, is the summum bonum, the absolute, hence the same as paranirvana. Besides being the final state, it is the condition of subjectivity, which has no relation to anything but the one absolute truth on its plane. It is that state which leads one to appreciate correctly the full meaning of non-being, which, as explained, is absolute being. Sooner or later, all that now seemingly exists will be in reality and actually in the state of paranishpayana. See, I'm trying though. But there is a great difference between conscious and unconscious being. The condition of paranishpayana without paramithra, the self-analyzing consciousness, is no bliss, but simply extinction for 7 eternities. Thus, an iron ball placed under the scorching rays of the sun will get heated through, but will not feel or appreciate the warmth, while a man will. It is only with a mind clear and undarkened by personality and assimilation of the merit of manifold existence, devoted to being in its collectivity, the whole living and sentient universe, that one gets rid of personal existence, merging into becoming one with the absolute, and continuing in full possession of paramithra. Stanza 2. Where was silence? Where were the ears to sense it? No. There was neither silence nor sound, naught save ceaseless, eternal breath, which knows itself not. The idea that things can cease to exist and still be is a fundamental one in Eastern psychology. Under this apparent contradiction in terms, there rests a fact of nature to realize, which in the mind, rather than to argue about words, is the important thing. A familiar instance of a similar paradox is afforded by chemical combination. The question whether hydrogen and oxygen cease to exist when they combine to form water is still a moot one. Some arguing that since they are found again when the water is decomposed, they must be there all the while. Others contending that as they actually turn into something totally different, they must cease to exist as themselves from the time being. But neither side is able to form the faintest conception of the real condition of things, which has become something else, and yet has not ceased to be itself. Existence as water may be said to be, for oxygen and hydrogen, a state of non-being, which is more real being than their existence as gases, and it may faintly symbolize the condition of the universe when it goes to sleep or ceases to be during the nights of Brahma, to awaken or reappear again when the dawn of the new Manvarata recalls it to what we call existence. The breath of the one existence is used in application only to the spiritual aspect of cosmogony by archaic esotericism. Otherwise, it is replaced by its equivalent in the material plane, motion. The one eternal element or element containing vehicle is space, dimensionless in every sense, coexistent with which an endless duration, primordial, hence indestructible matter in motion, absolute perpetual motion, which is the breath of the one element. This breath, as seen, can never cease, not even during the pralaic eternities. But the breath of the one existence does not all the same apply to the one causeless cause or the all beingness, in contradiction to all being, which is Brahma or the universe. Brahma or Hari, the four-faced God who, after lifting the earth out of the waters, accomplished the creation, is held to be only the instrumental and not a clearly implied the ideal cause. No Orientalist so far seems to have thoroughly comprehended the real issue and sense of the verses in the Purana that treat of creation. Therein Brahma is the cause of the potencies that are the generated subsequently for the work of creation, when a translator says, and from him proceed the potencies to be created after they had become the real cause. And from it proceed the potencies that will create as they become the real cause. On the material plane would perhaps be more correct. Save that one causeless ideal, cause there is no other to which the universe can be referred. Worthiest of aesthetics, through the potency of that cause, every created thing comes by its inherent or proper nature. If in the Vedanta and Naya Nimitta is the efficient cause as contrasted with Upandana, the material cause, and in the Sankhya Padhana implies the functions of both. In the Stoic philosophy, which reconciles all these systems, and the nearest component of which is the Vedanta, is expounded by the Advaita Vedantis. Again, guys, not pronouncing any of this correctly, but we'll just go with it. None but the Upadana can be speculated upon, that which is the minds of the Vaishnavas as the ideal in contradistinction to the real or para Brahman in Isvara, can find no room in published speculation, since the ideal, even in the misnomer, when applied to that of which no human reason, even that of the adept, can conceive. To know itself or oneself necessitates consciousness and perception, both limited faculties in relation to any subject except Parabrahman, to be cognized. Hence the eternal breath which knows itself not. Infinity cannot comprehend finiteness. The boundless can have no relation to the bounded and conditioned. In the occult teachings, the unknown and unknowable mover, or the self-existing, is absolute divine essence, and thus being absolute consciousness and absolute motion, to the limited senses of those who describe this indescribable, it is unconscious and immovableness. Concrete consciousness cannot be predicted of abstract consciousness any more than the quality wet can be predicted of water, wetness being its own attribute and the cause of the wet quality in other things. Consciousness implies limitations and qualifications, something to be conscious of and someone to be conscious of it. But absolute consciousness contains the cognizer, the thing cognized, and the cognition, all three in itself and all three one. No man is conscious of more than that portion of his knowledge that happens to have been recalled to his mind at a particular time. Yet such is the poverty of language that we have no term to distinguish the knowledge not actively thought of, but knowledge we are unable to recall to memory. To forget is synonymous with not to remember. How much greater must be the difficulty of finding terms to describe and to distinguish between abstract metaphysical facts or differences. It must not be forgotten also that we give names to things according to the appearances they assume for ourselves. That is so true. We can call absolute consciousness unconsciousness, because it seems to us that it must necessarily be so, just as we call the absolute darkness, because to our finite understanding, it appears quite impenetrable. Yet we recognize fully that our perception of such things does not do them justice. We involuntarily distinguish in our minds, for instance, between unconscious absolute consciousness and unconsciousness by secretly endowing the former with some indefinite quality which corresponds on a higher plane than our thoughts can reach, with what we know as consciousness in ourselves. But this is not any kind of consciousness that we can manage to distinguish from what appears to us as consciousness. I know that's a brain fuck loop right there, guys. But it really does make sense. The notion that you have suppressed memories and you have things that you learned that are stored somewhere in your brain, and being consciously aware that you know something, but it's not being recalled, and it's like bananas. Or subliminal things that you get from just taking in your environment that you're very unconscious of, but then your brain is aware of it. But you're not consciously aware of it, and you're not cognizing it until in another realm. I know, right? The hour had not yet struck, the ray had not yet flashed into the germ. The Matri Padma had not yet swollen. The ray of the ever darkness becomes as it is emitted a ray of engulfed light or life and flashes into the germ, the point in the mundane egg, represented by matter in its abstract sense. But the term point must not be understood as applying to any particular point in space, for a germ exists in the center of every atom, and thus collectively form the germ. Or rather, as no atom can be made visible to our physical eye, the collectivity of these, if the term can be applied to something which is boundless and infinite, forms the nominum of eternal and indestructible matter. The nominum, I think I'm saying that right, I don't even know. One of the symbolic figures for the dual creative powers in nature, matter and force on the material plane is Padma, the water lily of India. The lotus is the product of heat, fire, and water vapor or ether. Fire stands in every philosophical and religious system as a representation of the spirit of deity. The active male generative principle and ether on the soul of matter, the light of the fire for the passive female principle from which everything in this universe emanated. Hence, ether or water is the mother and fire is the father. Sir W. Jones, and before him, archaic botany, showed that the seeds of the lotus contained, even before they germinate, perfectly formed leaves, the miniature shape of what one day as perfect plants they will become, nature thus giving us a specimen of the preformation of its production. The seed of all phaeronogamous plants bearing proper flowers containing an embryo platelet ready formed. The lotus flower as a universal symbol. This explains the sentence, the mother had not yet swollen, the form being usually sacrificed to the inner or root idea in archaic symbology. The lotus or Padma is moreover a very ancient and favorite simile for the cosmos itself and also for men. The popular reason given are, firstly, the fact just mentioned that the lotus seed contains within itself a perfect miniature of the future plant, which typifies the fact that the spiritual prototypes of all things exist in the immaterial world before those things become materialized on earth. Secondly, the fact that the lotus plant grows up through the water, having its roots in the ullus, or mud, spreading its flower in the air above. The lotus thus typifies the life of man and also that of the cosmos. For the Secret Doctrine teaches that the elements of both are the same and that both are developing in the same direction. The root of the lotus, sunk in the mud, represents material life. The stalk pressing up through the water typifies existence in the astral world, and the flower floating on the water opening to the sky is emblematic of spiritual being. Her heart had not yet opened for the one ray to enter, thence to fall as three into four into the lap of Maya. The primordial substance had not yet passed out of its pre-cosmic latency into differentiated objectivity, or even become the man to the man, so far invisible protyle of science. But as the hour strikes and it becomes receptive, or the phoatic impress of the divine thought, the logos, or the male aspect of the anima mundi, alaya, its heart opens, it differentiates, and the three, mother, father, son, are transformed into four. Herein lies the origin of the double mystery of the Trinity and the Immaculate Conception. The first and fundamental dogma of occultism is universal unity, or homogeny, under three aspects. This led to a possible conception of deity, which as the absolute unity must remain forever incomprehensible to finite intellects. If thou wouldest believe in the power which acts within the root of a plant, or imagine the root concealed under the soil, thou hast to think of its stalk or trunk and of its leaves and flowers. Thou canst not imagine that the power independently of these objects. Life can be known only by the tree of life. Precepts for yoga. The idea of absolute unity would be broken entirely in our conception, and we, not something concrete before our eyes to contain the unity. The deity being absolute must be omnipresent, hence not an atom, but contains it within itself. The roots, the trunk, and its many branches are three distinct objects, yet they are one tree. Say the Kabbalists, the deity is one because it is infinite. It is triple because it is every manifestation. The manifestations is triple in its aspects, for it requires, as Aristotle had it, three principles for every natural body to become objective: primation, form, and matter. Privation meant in the mind of the great philosopher that which the occultists called the prototypes impressed in the astral light, the lowest plane and world of anima mundi. The union of these three principles depends upon a fourth, the life, which radiates from the summits of the unreachable, to become an universal diffused essence on the manifested planes of existence. And in a quaternary Father, Mother, Son, as a unity and quaternary as a living manifestation, has been the means of leading to the very archaic idea of Immaculate Conception, now finally crystallized into a dogma of the Christian Church, which cardinalized this metaphysical idea beyond any common sense. For one has to read the Kabbalah and study its numerical methods of interpretation, somebody wrote that wrong, to find the origin of that dogma. It is purely astronomical, mathematical, and preeminently metaphysical. The male element in nature, personified by the male deities in Logi, Viraji, or Brahma, Horus, or Osiris, is born through, not from, an immaculate source, personified by the mother, because that male having a mother cannot have a father. The abstract deity being sexless, and not even a being, but beingness, or life itself. Let us render this in the mathematical language of the author of the Source of Measures, speaking of the measure of man and his numerical Kabbalistic value. He writes that in Genesis, it is called the man, even Jehovah. Measure, and this is obtained in the way of 113 times 5 equals 565. And the value of 565 can be placed under the form of expression 56.5 times 10 equals 565. Here's my co-host. Here the man, number 113, became a factor of 56.5 times 10, and the Kabbalistic reading of this last numbered expression is Jod, he, Vu, he, or Jehovah. The expansion of 565 into 56.5 times 10 is purpose to show the emanation of the male, Jod, from the female, Eve, principle, or to speak the birth of a male element from an immaculate source, to other words, an immaculate conception. Thus is repeated on earth the mystery enacted according to the seers on the divine plane. The sons of the immaculate celestial virgin, or the undifferentiated cosmic prototype, matter is in its infinitude. It is born again on earth as the son of the terrestrial Eve, our mother earth, and becomes humanity as a total. Past, present, future for Jehovah, or Jod, he, then he, is androgyny, or both male and female. Above, the sun is the whole cosmos. Below, he is mankind. The triad or triangle becomes tetractys, the sacred Pythagorean number, the perfect square, and the six-faced cube on earth. The macropurposus, the great face, is now the micropurposus, the lesser face, or as the Kabbalists have it, the Ancient of Days, descending on Adam Kadmon, whom he uses as a vehicle to manifest through, gets transformed into Tetragrammaton. It is now in that lap of Maya, the great illusion, and between itself, the reality has the astral light, the great deceiver of men's limited senses, unless knowledge through Paramarthastaya comes to the rescue. The seven sons were not yet born from the web of light. Darkness alone was father, mother, Subhavat, and Subhavat was in darkness. The secret doctrine in the stanzas given here occupies itself chiefly, if not entirely, with our solar system and especially with our planetary chain. The seven sons, therefore, are the creators of the latter. This teaching will be explained more fully hereafter. Subhavat, the plastic existence that fills the universe, is the root of all things. Subhavat is, so to say, the Buddhistic, concrete aspect of the abstraction called in Hindu philosophy Mula Prakriti. It is the body of the soul and that which ether could be to Akasha, the later being the informing principle of the former. Chinese mystics have made it the synonym of being. In the oh boy. Ekloska Shastra of Nagarjuna, the Longshu of China, called by the Chinese the Yishu Lu Kalun, it is said that the original word of yu is being, or subhava, the substance giving substance to itself, also explained by him as meaning without action and with action, the nature which has no nature of its own. Subhava, from which subhavat, is composed of two words, sub, fair, handsome, good, sva, self, and bhava, being, of states of being. These two are the germ, and the germ is one. The universe was still concealed in the divine thought and the divine bosom. The divine thought does not imply the idea of divine thinker. The universe is not past, present, and future, which is a human and finite idea expressed by infinite thought. But in its totality, the set, an untranslatable term, the absolute being with the past and future crystallized in an eternal present, is that of that thought itself reflected in secondary or manifest cause. Brahma, neuter, as the mysterium magnum paraclesius, is an absolute mystery to the human mind. Brahma, the male-female, its aspect and anthropomorphic reflection is conceivable in the perceptions of blind faith, though rejected by human intellect when it attains its majority. Hence, the statement that during the prologue, so to say, of the drama of creation or beginning of cosmic evolution, the universe or the sun lies still concealed in the divine thought, which had not yet been penetrated into the divine bosom. This idea, note well, is at the root and forms of origin of all allegories about the sons of God, born immaculate virgins. She wants lots of love today. Stanza 3. The last vibration of the seventh eternal thrills through infinitude. The mother swells, expanding from within, without the like of the bud of the lotus. The seemingly paradoxical use of the sentences, seventh eternity, thus dividing the invisible, is sanctified in a Stoic philosophy. The latter divides boundless duration into unconditionality, eternal and universal time and condition. One is the abstraction of noumenon, of infinite time, kala. The other is phenomenal, appearing periodically as the effect of mahat, the universal intelligence limited to manvaratic duration. With some schools, mahat is the firstborn of padhana, undifferentiated substance, or the periodical aspect of mola pratrakti, the root of nature, which padhana is called maya, the illusion. In this respect, I believe a Stoic teaching differs from the Vedantin doctrines of both the Advaita and the Vishtuvada schools, for it says that while mola pratrakti, the nominum, is self-existing and without any origin, is in short parentless, adupadaka, as one with Brahman, parakariti is phenomenon, is periodical and no better than a phantasm of the former. So Mahat with the occultist, the firstborn of Ganaya or Gnosis, knowledge, wisdom of the Logos, is a phantasm reflected from the absolute Nirguna, Parabrahman, the one reality, devoid of attributes and qualities. See Upanishads, while with Vedantin's Mahat is manifested a Parakti and matter. Therefore, the last vibration of the seven entity, the seven eternity, was foreordained by no God in particular, but occurred in virtue of the eternal changeless law, which causes the great periods of activity and rest, called to geographically and at the same time so poetically the days and nights of Brahma. The expansion from within, without, of the mother, called elsewhere the waters of space, universal matrix, does not allude to the expansion from a small center or focus, but without reference to size or limitation or area, means the development of limitless subjectivity into a limitless objectivity. that either to us invisible and immaterial substance presents in eternity through its periodical shadow from its own plane into the lap of Maya, and implies that the expansion not being an increase in size for infinite extension admits of no enlargement. With a change of condition, it expanded like the bud of the lotus, for the lotus plant exists not only as a miniature embryo in its seed, a physical characteristic, but its prototype is present in an ideal form in the astral light from dawn to night during the Manavatric period, like everything else. As matter of fact, in this objective universe, from man down to mite, from giant trees down to the tiniest blades of grass, as this teaches the hidden science, is but the temporary reflection of the shadow of the eternal ideal prototype in divine thought. The word eternal, note well again, standing here only in the sense of anon, as lasting throughout the seemingly interminable but still limited cycle of activity called by us Manvarata. For what is the real Stoic meaning of Manvarata, or rather Manu Tara? It means esoterically between two manas, or where there are 14 in every day of Brahma, such a day consisting of 1,000 aggregates of 4 ages, or 1,000 great ages. Let us now analyze the word or name Manu. Orientalists in their dictionaries tell us that the term Manu is from the root man, to think, hence the thinking man. But stoically, every Manu, as an anthropomorphized patron of his special cycle or round, is but the personified idea of the thought divine, as the Hermetic Primander. I just read that. Each of the Manus, therefore, being the special God, the creator and fashioner of all that appears during his own respective cycle of being, or Manhavatra. Fohat runs the Manus of Daihan Kohans, errands and causes the ideal prototypes to expand from without, to cross gradually on a descending scale all the planes from nominum to the lowest phenomenon, to bloom finally at the last into full objectivity, the acum of illusion, or the grossest matter. The vibration sweeps along, touching with its swift wing simultaneously the whole universe, and the germ that dwelleth in darkness, the darkness that breathes, moves over the slumbering waters of life. The Pythagorean monad is also said to dwell in solitude and darkness like the germ, the idea of the breath of darkness moving over the slumbering waters of life, which is primordial matter with the latent spirit in it, recalls the first chapter of Genesis. Its original is the Brahmanical Narayana, the mover of the waters, who is the personification of the eternal breath of the unconscious, all, or para-Brahman, of the Eastern occultists. The waters of life, or chaos, the female principle is symbolism, are the vacuum to our mental sight, in which lie the latent spirit and matter. This it was that made Democritus assert after his inspector Leucippus that the primordial principles of all were atoms and vacuum in the sense of space, but not of empty space, as nature abhors a vacuum, according to the Pre-Pesitists and every ancient philosopher. In all cosmogonies, water plays the same important part. It is the base and source of material existence. Scientists, mistaking the word for the thing understood by water, the definite chemical combination of oxygen and hydrogen, thus giving a specific meaning to a term used by occultists in a generic sense, which is the use in cosmogony with a metaphysical and mystical meaning. Ice is not water, neither is steam, although all three have precisely the same chemical composition. Darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the waters, into the mother deep. The ray shoots through the virgin egg. The ray causes the eternal egg to thrill and drop the non-eternal periodical germ, which condenses into the world egg. The solitary ray dropping into the mother deep may be taken as meaning divine thought or intelligence impregnating chaos. This, however, occurs on the plane of metaphysical abstraction, or rather the plane whereon that which we call a metaphysical abstraction is a reality. The virgin egg being in one sense abstract eggness, or the power of becoming developed through fundication, is eternal and forever the same. And just as the fundication of an egg takes place before it's dropped, so the non-eternal periodical germ, which becomes later in the symbolism, the Mandoon egg, contains itself where it emerges from the symbol, from said symbol, the promise and potency of the all universe. Through the idea per se is of course an abstraction or a symbolic mode of expression. It is a symbol truly, as it suggests the idea of infinity as an endless circle. It brings before the mind's eye the picture of cosmos emerging from and in boundless space, a universe as shortless in magnitude, if not an endless in its objective manifestation. The smile of an egg also expresses the fact that taught in occultism that the primordial form of everything manifested from atom to globe, from man to angel, is spherical. The sphere having been with all nations the emblem of eternity and infinity, a serpent swallowing its tail to symbolize the meaning. However, the sphere must be thought of as seen from its center. The field of vision or of thought is like a sphere whose radii proceed from oneself in every direction and extended out into space, opening up boundless vistas all around. It is symbolical of the circle of Pascal and the Kabbalists, whose center is everywhere and circumference nowhere, a conception which enters into the compound idea of this emblem. The mundane egg is perhaps one of the most universally adopted symbols, highly suggestive, as it is equally in the spiritual, physiological, and cosmological sense. Therefore, it is found in every world theology, where it is largely associated with the serpent symbol, the later beginning everywhere in philosophy, as in religious symbolism, an emblem of eternity, infinitude, regeneration, and rejuvenation, as well as wisdom. The mystery of apparent self-generation and evolution through its own creative power, repeating in miniature the process of cosmic evolution in the egg, both being due to heat and moisture under the efflux of the unseen creative spirit, justified fully the selection of the graphic symbol. The virgin egg is the microcosmic symbol of the macrocosm prototype, the Virgin Mother, chaos as the primeval deep. The male creator, under whatever name, springs forth from the virgin female, the immaculate root fructified by the ray, who, if versed in astronomy and natural sciences, can fail to see its suggestiveness. Cosmos as receptive nature is an egg, fruitified yet left immaculated. Once regarded as boundless, it could have no other representation than a spheroid. The golden egg was surrounded by 7 natural elements: ether, fire, air, water. 4 ready, 3 secret. It may be found stated in Vishnu Purana that where elements are translated envelopes and a secret one is added, ahem kara. The original text has no aram kara. It mentions 7 elements without specifying the 3. Interesting. Then the 3 triangle fall into the 4 quadrary. The radiant essence becomes 7 inside, 7 outside. The luminous egg, which in itself is 3, curdles and spreads into milk white curds throughout the depths of mother and the root that grows in the ocean of life. The use of geometrical figures and the frequent allusions Two figures in all ancient scriptures must be explained. In the book of Daizan, as in the Kabbalah, there are two kinds of numerals to be studied, the figures, often simple blinds, and sacred numbers, the values of which are all known to the occultists throughout initiation. The former is but a conventional glyph. The latter is the basic symbol of all. That is to say that one is purely physical and the other purely metaphysical, the two standing in relation to each other as matter stands to spirit, the extreme poles of the one substance. As Balzac, the unconscious occultist of French literature, says somewhere, the number is to mind the same as it is to matter, an incomprehensible agent, perhaps so to the profane, never to the initiated mind. Number is, as the great writer thought, an entity, and at the same time, a breath emanating from that, what he called God, and what he called the all, the breath, which alone could organize the physical cosmos, where naught obtains its form, but through the deity, which is the effect of number. It is instructive to quote Balzac's words upon the subject. Quote, the smallest as the most immense creations, are they not to be distinguished from each other, but by their qualities, their dimensions, and their forces and attributes, all begotten by the number. The infinitude of the numbers is a fact proven to our mind, but out of which no proof can be physically given. The mathematician will tell us that the infinitude of the numbers exists, but is not to be demonstrated. God is a number endowed with motion, which is felt but not demonstrated. A unity, it begins a number which with it has nothing in common. The existence of number depends on unity, which without a single number begets them all. What? Unable either to measure the first abstractions yielded to you by the deity or to get off of it, you still hope to subject to your measurements the mystery of the secret sciences which emanate from the deity. And what you would feel would I plunge you into the abysses of motion, the force which organizes the number. What would you think? Or I to add the motion and number? Are begotten by the word, the supreme reason of the seers and prophets, who in days of old sensed the mighty breath of God, a witness to which is the apocalypse. The radiant essence curdled, and spread throughout the depths of space. From an astronomical point of view, this is easy of an explanation. It is the Milky Way, the world stuff or primordial matter in its first form. It is more difficult, however, to explain it in a few words or even lines from the standpoint of occult science and symbolism, as it is the most complicated of glyphs. Herein are enshrined more than a dozen symbols, to begin with the whole pantheon of mystery objects, every one of them having some definite occult meaning, extracted from the allegory churning of the ocean by the Hindu gods. Besides Amrita, the water of life and mortality, Suburi, the cow of plenty, called the fountain of milk and curds, was extracted from the sea of milk. Hence the universe admiration of the cow and bull, one the productive, the other the generative power in nature. Symbols connect with both the solar and the cosmic deities, the specific properties from the occult purposes of the 14 precious things, being explained only by the fourth initiation, cannot be given here, but the following may be remarked. In the Satapatha Brahmana, it is stated that the churning of the ocean of milk took place in the Sata Yuga, the first age, which immediately followed the deluge. As, however, neither the Rig Veda nor Manu, both preceding Vaivatstra's deluge, that of the bulge of the fourth race, mention the deluge. It is evident that it is not the great deluge, nor that which carried away Atlantis, nor even the deluge of Noah, which it meant here. This churning relates to the period before the Earth's formation and in direct connection with other universal legend, the various and contradictory versions of the culmination in the Christian dogma of the war in heaven and the fall of the angels. The Brahmins, reproached by the Orientalists with their versions of the same subject, often clashing with each other, are preeminently occult works, hence used purposely as blinds. They were allowed to survive for public use and property only because they were and are absolutely unintelligible to the masses. Otherwise, they would have disappeared from circulation as long ago as the days of Akbar. The root remains, the light remains, the Kurds remain, and still Ohio is one. Ohio is rendered father, mother of the gods in the commentaries, or the 6 in 1 of the substantiary root from which all proceeds. All depends upon the ancient giving to these 7 vowels, which may be pronounced as 1, 3, or even 7 syllables by adding the E after the letter O. This mystic name is given out because without a thorough mastery of the triple pronunciation, it remains forever ineffectual. This refers to the non-separatedness of all that lives and has its beginning, whether in active or passive state. In one sense, Ohio is the rootless root of all, hence all with para Brahman. In another sense, it is a name of the manifested one life, the eternal living unity. The root means, as already explained, pure knowledge, eternal, unconditional reality, or stat, whether we call it para Brahman or Malaprati, for these are the 2 aspects of the one. The light is the same omnipresent spiritual way, which has entered and now fundicated the divine egg and calls cosmic matter to being in its long series of differentiations. The Kurds are the first differentiation and probably refer also to the cosmic matter, which we know. The matter which, according to the revelation received from the primeval Dani Buddhas, is during the periodical sleep of the universe of the ultimate unity conceivable to the eye of the perfect Buddha Bodhisattva. This matter, radical and cool, becomes at the first awakening of the cosmic motion scattered through space, appearing when seen from Earth in clusters and lumps like curds and thin milk. These are the seeds of the future worlds, the star stuff. Oh, dear goodness. The root of life was in every drop of the ocean of immortality, and the ocean was radiant light, which was fire and heat and motion. Darkness vanished and was no more. It disappeared in its own essence in the body of fire and water and father and mother. The essence of darkness being absolute light, darkness is taken as the appropriate allegorical representation of the condition of the universe during Pralaya, or the term of absolute rest or non-being, as it appears to our finite minds. The fire, heat, and motion here spoken of are of course not the fire, heat, and motion of physical science, but the underlying abstractions and the noumena, or the soul of the essence of these material manifestations, the things in themselves, which, as modern science confesses, entirely elude instruments of the laboratory, in which even the mind cannot grasp, although it can equally little avoid the conclusion that these underlying essences of things must exist. Fire and water, or father and mother, may be taken here to mean the divine ray and chaos. Chaos from the union with spirit obtaining sense, shown with pleasure, and thus was produced the protogonos, the firstborn light, and says a fragment of Hermas. According to the Rosicrucian tenets, as headed and explained by the profane from one correctly, if only partially, so light and darkness are identical in themselves, being only divisible in the human mind. And according to Robert Fludd, darkness adopted illumination in order to make itself visible. According to the tenets of Eastern occultism, darkness is the one true actuality, the basis and root of light, without which the latter could never manifest itself, nor even exist. Light is matter and darkness pure spirit. Darkness in its radical metaphysical basis is subjective and absolute light, while the latter in all its seeming effulgence and glory is merely a mass of shadows, as it can never be eternal and simply an illusion or Maya. Even in the mind-baffling and science-harassing Genesis, light is created out of darkness, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and not vice versa. In him, in darkness, was life, and in life was the light of men. A day may come when the eyes of men will be opened, and then they might comprehend better than they do now that verse in the Gospel of John that says, "And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth it not." They will see then that the word darkness does not apply to man's spiritual eyesight, but indeed to the darkness, the absolute that comprehendeth not, cannot cognize transient light, however transcendent to the human eyes. The devil is now called darkness by the church, whereas the Bible, he is called the Son of God. See Job. The bright star of the early morning, Lucifer. See Isaiah. There is a whole philosophy of dogmatic craft in the reason why the first archangel who sprung from the depths of chaos was called Lux, Lucifer, the luminous son of the morning, or Manvadric dawn. He was transformed by the church into Lucifer, or Satan, because he is higher and older than Jehovah and had to be sacrificed in the new dogma. Behold, O Leno, the radiant child of the two, the unparalleled, refulgent glory, bright space, son of dark space, who emerges from the depths of the great dark waters. It is O Leo, the younger, the whom thou knowest now as Quan Sha Yin. He shines forth as the sun. He is the blazing divine dragon of wisdom. The Ika is Kator, 4, and Kator takes to itself 3, and the union produces the Sapta, 7, in whom are the 7 which become the Tridza, thrice 10, the hosts of the multitudes. Behold him lifting the veil and unfurling it from east to west. He shuts out the above and leaves the below to be seen as the great illusion. He marks and places the shining ones, stars, and turns the upper space into a shoreless sea or fire, and the one manifested element into the great waters. Bright space, son of dark space, corresponds to the ray dropped at the first thrill of the new dawn into the great cosmic depths, from which it reemerges differentiated as Ohio, the younger, the new life, to become to the end of the life cycle the germ of all things. He is the incorporeal man who contains in himself the divine idea, the generator of light and life. To use an expression of fellow Judas, he is called the blazing dragon of wisdom, because firstly, he is that which the Greek philosophers called the logos, the verbum of the thought divine, and secondly, because in esoteric philosophy, the first manifestation being the synthesis or the aggregate of universal wisdom, aheo. The son of the sun contains himself the 7 creative hosts, the Sephiroth, and thus the essence of manifested wisdom. He who bathes in the light of Aheo will never be deceived by the veil of Maya. Quan Sha Yin is identical with an equivalent of the Sanskrit. I'm not going to get that out and don't know how to say that, so sorry. And as such, he is an androgynous deity, like the tetragrammaton and of the Logai, of antiquity. It is only by some sects in China that he is anthropomorphized and represented with female attributes, when under his female aspect he becomes Kuan Yin, the goddess of mercy, and called the divine voice. The latter is the patron deity of Tibet and of the island of Puto in China, where both deities have a number of monasteries. The dragon of wisdom is the one, the Eka, Sanskrit or Saka. It is curious that Jehovah's name in Hebrew should also be one Echad. His name Echad, says the rabbins, the philologists, ought to decide which of the two is derived from the other, linguistically and symbolically. Surely not the Sanskrit. The one and the dragon are expressions used by the ancients in connection with their respective logi. Jehovah, esoterically as Elohim, is also the serpent or dragon that tempted Eve, and the dragon is an old glyph for the astral light, the primordial principle, which is the wisdom of chaos. Archaic philosophy, recognizing neither good or evil as a fundamental or independent power, but starting from the absolute all, universal perfection, eternally, trace both through the course of natural evolution to pure light, condensing gradually into form, hence becoming matter of evil. It was left with the early and ignorant Christian fathers to degrade the philosophical, highly scientific idea of the emblem, the dragon, into the absurd superstition called the devil. They took it from the later Zoroastrians, who saw devils or the evil in the Hindu devas, and the word evil thus became, by a double transmutation, the evil in every tongue, diablos, diable, diavolo. But the pagans have always shown a philosophical discrimination in their symbols. The primitive symbol of the serpent symbolized divine wisdom and perfection, and it always stood for psychical regeneration and immortality. Hence Hermes calling the serpent the most spiritual of all beings. Moses initiated in the wisdom of the Hermes, following suit in Genesis, the Gnostic serpent with the 7 vowels over its head, being the emblem of the 7 hierarchies of septenary or planetary creators. Hence also the Hindu serpent, Sasha or Anta, the infinite, a name of Vishnu, whose first Vahan or vehicle of the primordial waters is the serpent. Yet they all made a difference between the good and the bad serpent, the astral light of the Kabbalists, between the form and the embodiment of divine wisdom in the region of the spiritual and later evil. On the plane of matter, Jesus accepted this serpent as a synonym of wisdom, and this formed part of his teaching. Be ye wise as serpents, he says. In the beginning, before mother became father mother, the fairy dragon moved in the infinitudes alone. The Brahmin calls the earth Saparangi, the serpent queen, and the mother of all that moves. Before our globe became egg-shaped and the universe also, a long tail of cosmic dust, or the first mist, moved and withered like a snake in space. The spirit of God moving on chaos was symbolized by every nation in the shape of a fiery serpent, breathing fire and light upon the primordial waters, until it had incubated cosmic matter and made it assume the annular shape of a serpent with its tail in its mouth, which symbolizes not only eternity and infinitude, but also the globular shape of all bodies formed within the universe from the fiery mists. The universe, as well as the mother and man, cast off periodically serpent-like their old skins to assume new ones after a time of rest. The serpent is surely not a less graceful or more unpoetic image than the caterpillar and chrysalis, from which springs the butterfly, the Greek emblem of Psyche and the human soul. The dragon was also the symbol of the Logos with the Egyptians, as was the Gnostics. In the book of Hermes, Pymander, The oldest and the most spiritual of the Logai of the Western continent appears to Hermes in the shape of a fiery dragon of light, fire, and flame. Pymander, the thought divine personified, says, "The light is me. I am the nous, the mind or Manu. I am thy God, and I am far older than the human principle which escapes from the shadow, darkness, or the concealed deity. I am the germ of thought, the repleasant word from the Son of God. All that thus sees and hears is thee in the verbatim of the Master. It is thought, Mahat, which is God and the Father. The celestial ocean, the ether, is the breath of the Father, and the giving principle, the Mother and the Holy Spirit, for these are not separate, and their union is life." Here we find the unmistakable echo of archaic secret doctrine as now expounded. Only the latter does not place at the head of the evolution of life the Father, who comes third and is the Son of the Mother, but the eternal and ceaseless breath of all. The Mahat, understanding universal mind thought, before it manifests itself as Brahma or Siva, appears as Vishnu, says Sanskraya Sarah. Hence, Mahat has several aspects, just as the Logos has. Mahat is called the Lord in the primary creation and is, in this sense, universal cognition or thought divine. But the Mahat, which was first produced, is afterwards called egoism, which is born as I, that is said to be the second creation. And the translator explains in a footnote, when Mahat develops into the feeling of self-consciousness I, then it assumes the name of egoism, which translated into our Stoic phraseology means when Mahat is transformed into the human manas, or even that of the infinite gods, and becomes Aham Ship. Why is it called Mahat of the second creation? Will be explained in book 2. The sea of fire is then the superastral light, the first radiation from the root, the undifferentiated cosmic substance, which becomes astral matter. It is also called the fiery serpent, as above described. If the student bears in mind that there is but one universal element, which is infinite, unborn, and undying, that all the rest, as in the world of phenomena, are but so many various differentiated aspects and transformations, correlations, they are now called, of that one, from cosmic down to microcosmical effects, from superhuman down to human and subhuman beings, and the totality, in short, of objective experience, then the first and chief difficulty will disappear and occult cosmology may be mastered. All the Kabbalists and occultists, Eastern and Western, recognize the identity of the Father-Mother, the primordial ether and Akasha, astral light, and its homogeny before the evolution of the sun, cosmically Fohat, for it is cosmic electricity. Fohat hardens and scatters the seven brothers, which means that the primordial electric entity from the Eastern occultists insists that electricity is an entity, electrifies into life, and separates primordial stuff or progenic matter into atoms, themselves the source of all life and consciousness. There exists a universal agent unique to all forms in life. This is called Ob, active and passive, positive and negative, like day and night. It is the first light in the creation. Ephesius Levi's Kabbalah, the first light of the primordial Elohim, the atom, male and female, scientifically, electricity and life. The ancients represented it by a serpent, for the Fohat hisses at his glides. Hither and thither it zigzags. The Kabbalah figures it with the Hebrew letter Teth, whose symbol is the serpent, which played such a prominent part in the mysteries. Its universal value is 9, for it is the 9th letter of the alphabet and the 9th door of the 50 portals or gateways that lead to concealed mysteries of being. It is the magical agent par excellence and designates in Hermetic philosophy life infused into primordial matter, the essence that composes all things, and the spirit that determines their form. But there are two secret hermetical operations, one spiritual, the other material. Correlative and forever united. Thou shalt separate the earth from the fire and the subtle from the solid. That which ascends from earth to heaven and descends again from heaven to earth, it, the subtle light, in the strong force of every force, for it conquers every subtle thing and penetrates into every solid. Thus was the world formed. It was not Zeno alone, the founder of these Stoics, who taught that the universe evolves when its primary substance is transformed from the state of fire into that of air, that into water. Heraclitus of Euphrates maintained that the one principle that underlies all phenomena is nature is fire. The intelligence that moves the universe is fire, and fires is intelligence. And while Anna said the same of the air, Thales of Miletus 600 years BC of water, the esoteric doctrine reconciles all the philosophers by showing that through each was right, the system of none was complete. Sorry, guys, I am trying. As we could see, I'm like having issues today. But guys, I'm going to leave it there. It's been going on for a while. I'm having a hard time getting words out properly, but I hope you really enjoy this. This is very eye-opening and very interesting. Next time we'll pick up and continue on stanza 3. I hope all of you enjoyed. Sending each and every one of you love and light. Have a great weekend. Please be safe. There's a lot of things going on right now that you need to keep your eyes and ears in your communities aware of. Stay cool, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.